G'day everyone. So today we've got a bit of a summer seasonal conditions update as well as planning for autumn this year, 2021. So today we're going to go through basically a few factors. We're going to have a quick chat. Matt Brett from the dairy here is going to just give a quick farm overview. Just going to talk about a project coming along with Tocal as well, the Smarter Irrigations for Profit program and a field day coming up. Josh Hack from PGG Wrightsonseeds is going to talk about summer quality, specifically around Kikuyu. So there's a fair few guys here, from the Dungog Gresford area, with Kikuyu in the system. So we're going to have a quick run over that, and that's the concepts there are generic for most summer feeds as well. So we'll put that into play. Then I'll be talking, preparing for autumn and sowing and establishment, and we'll go through, sowing options, what we can do to be better at what we do, and also a little bit on supply restrictions. Myself, Kyle Roper, I'm a local agronomist. A lot of you do know me, some of you I'm not sure. A few new faces here, which is great. So I've got my own farm in Singleton. I grow lucerne and obviously work with Farmers Warehouse out of Singleton and Dungog as a local agronomist. So I guess I try to find myself pretty grounded in doing things practically and economically. I'm not textbook, that's for sure. So today's about asking questions, and we've got a great group of people here in terms of knowledge bases. So people like Josh, Tanya, Adam, Hamish, wherever Hamish is from Granular Products at the back, Andrew Mulligan from Verbac Animal Health. So there's some great suppliers in here. So it's a mix and mingle. Please ask any questions. No questions stupid. We've all a bit about today's goals. I guess it's to share research, knowledge, the science of what we do. We put a couple of directional arrows up on the next slide, which basically, we're saying everyone's different. So, whether you're a dairy farmer, a beef cattle farmer, or a grain or sheep or whatever it may be, you've got a different way of doing things. Whether you're conventional or organic, whatever it is, at the end of the day, we work through that. Some things work for certain peoples and some things don't. So I guess a little bit of respect today as well with opinions or things like that. They are only opinions and everyone has one. And as I said, some things work for some people and some don't. But it's we all end up at the same point, hopefully, which is a successful business. So that's what the plan is today. So I might flick over to Matt to just have a quick chat about what the dairy's doing and where we're up to and cattle numbers and things like that.
So for people who don't know, we milk about 300 cows here year round. We're slightly down at the moment, but we've got a projected calving pattern to get back up to over 300 cows in the next sort of 3 months, I suppose, and then we'll probably pretty much stabilise at that number, perhaps go up to 310, 320 at our maximum over the next 12 months. Just at the moment, we're a little bit of an anxious time. We've got about 35 hectares of corn ready to hopefully come off for silage in the next... Look, it'd be ready next week, but the weather doesn't want to play the game next week, so we're probably up for 10 or 20 mils on Saturday, then a bit of rain again on Tuesday at the start of the week. So that'll be okay with the corn. The corn will be fine. It can push back till the next week, but I really would be hoping to get it off then. So it's a beautiful crop, but it's not worth much to me until it's in the pits. So it's a little bit of an anxious time. But anyway, if anyone's a weather oracle here, tell me exactly what to do right now and I'll believe you. That'll be great. But if not, we're all just probably guessing a little bit at the moment as to how the weather's going to go, but we hope we're going to be right. So at the moment the cows are grazing summer pastures. We've got, under our pivots here, we do have about 10 or 12 hectares into corn that we've grown under the pivot. The rest of it's remained pasture that we've been grazing over the summer, and that was an Italian ryegrass stand predominantly all since last autumn, all the way through winter, spring, and we really didn't stop grazing the Italian ryegrass dominance in the pasture up until just before Christmas. That's how long the Italian rye will last for us here. In that ryegrass pasture though, we always sow chicory and red clover, plus a bit of white clover and a bit of Persian clover as well. It's normally about it, isn't it? And it is a kikuyu base underneath there. Now, the truth is we get a bit of kikuyu come back through during the summer. We get quite a bit of chicory, quite a bit of red clover. They've both been really good this year. We do struggle with problems with summer grass weeds like crabgrass. Certainly can be an issue for us, and yeah, I don't know. I'm still struggling to find out what the magic solution is to that one. So again, if anyone, Kyle, so this is an open, helpful discussion. So if anyone can tell me the magic answer for that, that'd be great. But yeah, look, I tend just to we keep it short. We keep topping behind the cows. They'll nibble away at that bit of crabgrass anyway, and what we've got in, the bit of kikuyu, the chicory, and the red clover that we have there actually makes for pretty reasonable summer grazing for them anyway. We do have other sections on the farm down on our alluvial flat country at the moment that we've got lucerne and chicory that we've sown as a specific stand for summer high quality pasture. It's about 6 hectares that we've got established now, and we're about to establish another 6 hectares for next year. So the plan is always to have, perhaps up to 10 to 12 hectares over the summer of that lucerne and chicory mix that we always know that we've got that really good high quality option there to graze the cows on. What we're going to do now, as soon as the corn comes off, we'll look at sowing straight back into that. We'll basically just probably give it a quick spray. We've got our spray contractor back on board now. He's just had a little bit of a holiday for the last couple of months, but he's back to full health. So we'll get him into gear pretty.
I reckon he looks a bit fast too.
Yeah, no, he's a new man. He'll be right. We won't be able to have enough work for him. Yeah. So anyway, we'll get him straight back into action. A bit of a spray out behind that corn as it comes off as we run the harvester over it, and then we'll drill straight in with our winter pasture in there, which will, probably a couple of paddocks. It'll be just a simple rye and oats or something like that. There'll be a couple of other paddocks where we might wait an extra week or so, and then we'll go in with our proper Italian ryegrass based mix, where it'll be an Italian rye plus our clovers and chicory as well. And then we'll just start sowing the rest of the farm from then on in. I always sow under the pivots quite early. We can sow really from the first week in March under the pivots without too much worry, because we know we can just get the water straight back onto it if it does turn dry, which is not looking like that's going to be a problem this season, but certainly has been the last three years. But we still found even in those droughty type years, going in early hasn't been a problem where you've got that reliable water. We always make sure that we use, if we've got some pressure with insects or whatever, we'll use an insecticide or whatever treated seed as we need it, because that can be a worry sowing early. And then, the plan is that we'll then be really grazing good quality, high energy, high protein feed really from end of April onwards for the cows. So the corn that'll go in the pits will provide us, in theory, this is the hope, probably about 1,600 tonne as fed in the pits, which really will give us plenty to use over the year, and hopefully a bit of a backup storage as well. And that'll help with that increasing cow numbers as we go along. Like I say, we're really, at the moment, we're back down to about 268 milkers, I think there were there this morning. So we are looking to build about 60 milking cows over the next, the next 12 months. So we want to make sure that we've got plenty of feed in the system. Irrigation, other than the 40 hectares we have under centre pivot, we've got travelling soft hose trail co-irrigators that can do about 20 hectares out in this section, just out to the southeast out here. And then we have a hard hose that can do another 10 hectares down on the alluvial river flats. And we do have irrigation on our runoff block just up the road a kilometre to the north up there, where we have probably capabilities to do, just depending on how hot and dry the weather is, how much we have to pull back, but we can do between 10 and 20 hectares up there with a travelling irrigator as well. Is that what we're looking at, mate? Is it rightio? I'm happy to hand it over or take questions, or what do you want me to do?
Any questions or anything as we go, or?
Yeah, so interesting, Matt, with the kikuyu,
Yep.
how are you finding, so after repeated oversowing,
Yep.
how are you finding your big out in the summertime as a pasture?
Yeah, no, it struggles. I totally believe there's no easy answer. If you want to focus on an Italian type ryegrass that grows for that long, that we're really, like I say, we're really putting it in 1st of March, it's being sown, and we graze it right up until the end of December. There's only two months that I sort of, I'm worrying about kikuyu, and certainly the kikuyu in those stands is not as strong as I've got a couple of paddocks out the back here where we just do an annual ryegrass, shorter growing season ryegrass, and the kikuyu is much stronger out there. So if you want to focus on a kikuyu dominated system, I think you're going to really struggle, or I struggle, to do really well with Italian ryegrass, and then also do really well with kikuyu over the summer. But I'm prepared to make that trade-off because I get so much more milk, so much more kilos of dry matter. Well, no, I shouldn't say that. You will certainly get more kilos, or just as many kilos of dry matter out of kikuyu. But energy, protein, quality out of the Italian rye is I'm happy with that trade-off.
We seem to come around to this discussion every time. Josh is going to throw a few things up there as well. A lot of it does come down to management, and it comes down to that decision as well of what you're comfortable with. And I guess there's the best of both worlds here in terms of, we have pushed that chicory concept and clovers and high quality feed under those situations, and I'm content with it as an agronomist. That was the decision we made. We knew some of the ramifications. But then, on a year like this on the dryland country, the kikuyu is as good as anywhere in the country. It is what it is. And for here at the moment, that's the fit that I guess, myself and Matt have probably said yes to. But I mean, Josh.
And I'm going to agree with what Josh is about to tell us here about our grazing management.
Keep in mind, Josh is very
stuff.
strong on the north coast, up around Taree,
Yeah.
and we did this same field day there yesterday, and I went up, and it was an eye opener for me, who's not, kike's probably 20% of my client base here, and it's probably 90% of Josh's client base. So, Josh probably have a few good comments on this quickly.
First thing I'd say is I've got a mic on, but first thing is it's to do with the time and period that plants got to recover. Okay, so if we think of kikuyu, it's really only going to kick off in January. Yes, it turns green in October, November, but it's just storing a bit of energy, and that's why in a minute when I talk about this time, it's really important for grazing management. But when we're trying to sow it, okay, and we talk about kike getting going in January, we start getting our tropical rainfall, starts taking off, we get humid, we get heat, fantastic, that's what the plant wants. And then we start getting really good growth in that February, March period. And then we're talking about sowing, okay, and that's just the way it is. And especially if I've seen it, if you're going into those same paddocks every year and you are going in early, you're going to restrict that plant's ability to store energy in its roots to get through winter plus spring, because it doesn't want to grow in spring anyway, because still our nights are too cold, all right? And then you're asking it to come back in October, November, December and come again. And one thing I've learned from kike is it's a bloody tough plant, but as with everyone, you knock it on the head enough times and it struggles. Okay, so you do make a choice and that's fine. And I've got farmers up my way that are putting lucerne chicory paddocks in, and they've said they're not that great at kike paddocks, so we're choosing those paddocks. They're alluvial. We can get better stuff out of them with chicory and lucerne, and there's reasons why we do things. All I'm trying to explain is what I think's happening with the plant, and if you want to do things around to manage that, these are some things you can do. So if you do, and we'll talk about this later on when I've got a bit of a plan up, but if you did want to plant in March, there's nothing wrong with doing that, and kike can handle that. And if you did do a light spray of Roundup, which we call frosting, okay, which is about 70, 80 grams of active of Roundup, but talk to Kyle and everyone about that, just to slow it up so you can get ryegrass established, works fantastic. All I suggest to guys when they do that is don't do it in the same paddock year after year if you want to have kike. All right, so it can handle a year of doing that. Next year, choose a different paddock to do it to and rotate, and that'll be your early paddock. Next year, and I always talk about you know, splitting your paddocks up into 3. And you got, you know, your early, your mid, your late. And exactly what you just said then, you know, you get starting in March, and then, you know, early April's here, end of April to May is here. And that's following the cows on some dryland kayak and putting some annuals in or whatever. But my point is, if you are a kayak farmer, now this is if you are a kayak farmer, not if we're talking about lucerne or chicory and all that sort of stuff. If you're going to sow these paddocks early, okay, which I recommend people do because they'll be the best paddocks all year, in your first, and this is your farm, do this part of the farm in the first year. So this is your first sown this year. Next year, do this as your first sown. All right? And then the next year after do that is your first sown. And then you're starting to give the kikuyu a spell after 2 or 3 years, and then it's sometimes going right through to May. Allows it to build up its energy, its roots, get going again, and then it gets all through winter and then it can kick off. Does that make sense? Yep. So just don't expect it to be able to be Superman. Yeah.
No, that's perfect.
And then the other one quickly, because it's horses for courses. It's not exact science, but the other end, and if we're talking about Italians, I've got guys that use a lot of fertiliser, put Italians in, and they're 100% kayak farms, and they've got the best kikuyu you'll see on the coast. But it's to do with their grazing management. Because if you've got a kikuyu plant that stops growing here, right, in May, it goes pretty dormant through winter. Okay, once we get to September even, and then October, it starts to want to grow as such, but it won't really start growing until we get to January. Okay, what it needs to do is it needs to seed light. Okay, so if we've got a ryegrass stand, which we're pumping with some fert and trying to get some good growth, which is what we want to do, get quality feed. Okay, you've still got this mat of kikuyu down the bottom here. Okay, if we are going past our canopy closure, you are not just doing damage to your kayak, you're doing damage to your ryegrass. Because in your ryegrass, every time you grow a leaf, you can grow a new plant, which is called a tiller. And they'll come out down here. If you go past canopy closure, those tillers are bought. Those tillers don't get sunlight. They're your new plants. They're the ones that you want to keep going November, December, and getting that quality feed. So they're going to abort. And then the other one that's going to happen is if you keep going, and this just keeps going up, this plant sends a signal that says, I can't live here because it's too dark for me, I want to go up. All of a sudden you'll get a plant, you will start getting nodes, okay, and the plant's actually growing from up here, and then it'll send these tillers out here. And that's called aerial tillering, and they're your new plants, they're the ones you want in spring. So if we get them ones there growing out off the ground, and then we come through and ask the cows to eat it, or we mow it, or silage it, or whatever, and that's gone, that plant is 100% dead, and you won't have it coming back. Right? So, but for the kikuyu point of view, this needs to see light. It starts to not grow, but you look at your lawns around the place. Best time to have kayak for a lawn is September, October, November, because it doesn't grow. You don't have to mow it, but it turns nice and green, looks good, doesn't it? So, what we're saying is, it needs to start to store energy so that when it gets the right conditions, whether it's December, January, whenever, it's stored enough energy, it's built itself up, so then it can just go bang and then recover and go. But if we keep getting this wrong, you can do it once or twice and it's going to happen. It's springtime, it happens all the time, but it's recognising we're out of control, fixing it, coming back, resetting residuals.
As I mentioned before, Tocal's been used as one of the dairy optimisation sites for the irrigation project. There's been a group which myself and Matt and Julia, a few others here have been involved with as a bit of a steering group, and there's a field day coming up the 3rd of March. I think anyone that's in the irrigation, whether it be beef or dairy, it would be wise to come along because there is some good information that's coming out of it. And it's just concepts. At the end of the day, it's helps with your management and those kind of things. I think between all of us and even myself as an irrigator, looking at the best times to irrigate and get the most out of that water has been very important. So there's a bit on maintaining irrigation systems, using some tools. So there's some free online things with Erie Pasture that I think anyone that's been there is it 10th? Thank you, Julia. 10th of March. I know there's flyers up there, isn't there, Dave, for it? So on your way out, grab a flyer, and again, it will be one of those events to register to and whatnot with LLS and this. So Erie Pasture has been one of the tools we've been using, and I think anyone that's been on and using it for a free tool, it's bloody brilliant. So it pulls in data from temperature, rainfall, and if you've got water or moisture meters, you can implement that as well to give you an idea of what kind of irrigation amounts you should be looking at using. So, talking about readily available water, and that's the key thing to decide when you're going to be irrigating. So I'm not going to go into it today because I'm by no means an irrigation specialist. That's what the event's about. So I think anyone that's doing irrigation or thinking about upgrading equipment, looking at pivots or linears and things like that, it will be a good thing to come across to. That's the Erie Pasture. I think it comes out of University of Queensland, have developed it along with a few independents, and Tasmania's got to do with the other stuff we're doing as well, University of Tassie. So that's just some information on what we're going to be doing. I think Dr. James Hills, if everything continues, is going to come up from Tassie. Matt, I think that's right, isn't it? Yeah, so he's basically the guy that's set all this up. So he's very good at what he does in this situation. So it would be really good to have him here. So I think, again, it'd be a great event if people can come along to it.